The annual Johnson family reunion was held at Golden Fork's flagship restaurant in downtown Chicago, just like it had been for the past 7 years. 300 family members gathered in the private dining room upstairs, surrounded by the warm mahogany paneling and crystal chandeliers that had made Golden Fork Enterprises the most successful restaurant chain in the Midwest. I was sitting at table 12, picking at my salmon, when my father decided to deliver his traditional assessment of my life choices. The dessert course had just been served, Golden Fork's signature chocolate soufflé, and Dad was feeling expansive after his third glass of wine. "You know what I love about these reunions?" he announced to our table of 8. "Getting to see how the family business has grown. Look around this room. This is what real success looks like." My cousin Derek, who managed Golden Fork's marketing department, raised his glass. "To Grandpa Joe's vision. 23 restaurants across 4 states, and we're just getting started." Everyone toasted enthusiastically. My Aunt Rebecca, who handled Golden Fork's human resources, beamed with pride. "The expansion into Ohio has been incredible. We're opening 3 new locations this quarter alone." My Uncle Mike, Golden Fork CEO, stood up to address the entire room. "Family, I want to thank you all for being here tonight. Golden Fork isn't just a business, it's a legacy. Built by Johnsons, run by Johnsons, owned by Johnsons." Applause filled the dining room. Several cousins whistled and cheered. Then Uncle Mike's gaze fell on me. "Of course, not everyone in the family chooses the entrepreneurial path. Some people prefer simpler careers." The table turned to look at me. I was wearing my usual family reunion outfit, a simple black dress from Target and flats from Payless. My job as a library assistant at the Chicago Public Library System wasn't exactly the kind of career that impressed the Golden Fork dynasty. Dad seized the moment. "Take my daughter Emily here. 28 years old, and she's never shown any interest in business whatsoever. Content to stamp books and process returns for the rest of her life." My cousin Sarah, who managed Golden Fork's finances, laughed. "Not everyone can handle the pressure of real business, Uncle Tom. It takes a special kind of person to build something meaningful." Dad nodded sagely. "Exactly. Emily's always been more of a follower than a leader. Some people are just built for service jobs." I continued eating my soufflé while the conversation swirled around me. This was familiar territory. Every family gathering for the past decade had included some variation of this discussion. "The restaurant business requires vision," Uncle Mike continued. "Strategic thinking. Risk assessment. Financial planning. You have to understand market dynamics, consumer psychology, operational efficiency." Derek jumped in. "Plus the ability to manage complex investor relationships. Golden Fork wouldn't exist without our sophisticated funding structure." I almost choked on my chocolate soufflé. Dad leaned back in his chair, warming to his theme. "That's what I've been trying to explain to Emily for years. Business isn't for everyone. It requires a certain mindset. A certain ambition." Aunt Rebecca nodded sympathetically. "Some people are just more comfortable in supporting roles. There's nothing wrong with that. Libraries are important too." The condescension was so thick you could cut it with a dinner knife. My cousin Kevin, who ran Golden Fork's purchasing department, raised his glass again. "To the family members who chose the entrepreneurial path. Who understood that building wealth requires taking risks." More applause. More toasts to their collective business genius. Finally, Dad turned to me directly. "Emily, you should really think about your future. Library work is fine for now, but there's no growth potential. No wealth building. You'll never amount to anything in business if you don't take some initiative." The entire table was looking at me expectantly, waiting for me to acknowledge my limitations, perhaps ask for advice on how to improve my prospects. I put down my fork and smiled. "You're absolutely right, Dad. I should probably leave the success to my cousins." Everyone seemed satisfied with this response. Several family members nodded approvingly. Kevin actually patted my shoulder. "That's good self-awareness, Emily. Not everyone can be an entrepreneur." I excused myself to use the restroom and walked through the dining room, past tables full of family members celebrating their collective success. The Golden Fork staff was moving efficiently between tables, serving coffee and clearing dessert plates. What none of them knew was that I'd been watching their operations very carefully for 7 years. Every menu change, every location expansion, every staffing decision. Because while my family saw me as the simple librarian who couldn't understand business complexity, I'd actually been Golden Fork's largest investor since 2016. Through a network of investment vehicles managed by Meridian Capital Partners, I own 78% of Golden Fork Enterprises. The initial investment had been $50 million from my inheritance, money my grandmother had left me in a trust that my father had somehow never learned about. Over 7 years, as Golden Fork expanded and grew, my position had increased to $200 million. Every major decision the family had made about their restaurant chain had ultimately been approved by my representatives on Golden Fork's board of directors. Every expansion, every renovation, every strategic initiative had been funded with my money while my father explained to relatives why I'd never amount to anything in business. I called my fund manager, Patricia Chin, from the restaurant's bathroom. "Patricia, it's Emily. I need to initiate liquidation procedures for the Golden Fork Enterprises position." "Emily, that's a significant holding. Are you certain about this timing? The Q3 numbers look very strong." "I'm certain. I want everything pulled. Complete liquidation within 30 days. There was a pause. "This will trigger the majority shareholder dissolution clause. The board will need to be notified immediately. Are you prepared for that level of exposure?" I thought about my father's voice explaining to the table why I'd never amount to anything in business. "I'm prepared. Send the notifications." "Emily, I have to point out that this decision will essentially destroy the company. Golden Fork's operational capital comes entirely from your funding structure. Without continued investment, they'll be insolvent within 60 days. I understand the implications. This seems like an emotional response to something. Maybe we should schedule a meeting to discuss." "Patricia, I've been monitoring Golden Fork's financial metrics for 2 years. Their expansion rate is unsustainable. They're opening new locations faster than they can train competent management. Customer satisfaction scores have been declining across all markets. They're spending money like they have unlimited access to capital, which was true until today." This was all accurate. While my family celebrated their business acumen, they'd been making increasingly poor operational decisions. Too much expansion, too little quality control, too many hired managers who didn't understand Golden Fork service standards. "If you're certain," Patricia said, "I'll begin the liquidation process. The board notification will go out within 2 hours." "Perfect. And Patricia? Make sure the documentation clearly identifies that this decision comes from Thames River Holdings. I want the board to understand exactly who's been funding their operations." Thames River Holdings. Tearage Tom's Rebecca's Holdings, named after my parents. A little joke I'd been enjoying privately for 7 years. I returned to the dining room where dessert was winding down and coffee was being served. The family was still discussing Golden Fork's bright future. "The Nashville expansion is going to be huge," Derek was saying. "We've identified 12 prime locations for the next 18 months. Uncle Mike nodded enthusiastically. The Southeast market has been underserved for fine dining chains. Golden Fork is positioned to dominate that space. I sat down and sipped my coffee while they planned their empire's continued growth with money that would disappear in approximately 48 hours. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. "Board notification sent. Expect response within 4 to 6 hours." The reunion concluded around 10 p.m. with the traditional group photo in front of Golden Fork's logo. 300 family members arranged in rows, all smiling proudly in front of the restaurant that represented their collective success. I stood in the back row, next to my cousins who managed various aspects of the business they thought they owned. The next morning, I was reshelving returns in the library's fiction section when my phone started ringing. "Uncle Mike." I let it go to voicemail. Then Derek called. Then Aunt Rebecca. By lunchtime, I had 11 missed calls and 14 text messages. Uncle Mike's voicemail. "Emily, something very strange has happened. Our primary investor has pulled out of Golden Fork. I don't understand what's going on, but we need to have an emergency family meeting." Derek's text. "Have you heard about the Golden Fork situation? Someone called Thames River Holdings just liquidated their entire position. We're trying to figure out who they are." Aunt Rebecca's voicemail. "Emily, I know you're not involved in the business side of things, but we're having a crisis with our funding. Can you call me back?" I deleted the messages and continued with my work. The afternoon children's reading program was starting in an hour, and I needed to set up the activity stations. At 3 p.m. while I was reading Green Eggs and Ham to 15 preschoolers, my phone buzzed with an emergency text from Dad. Family meeting tonight 7 p.m. at Mike's house. Golden Fork emergency. Everyone must attend. I typed back, I have to work late tonight. Library inventory. Dad responded immediately, this is more important than books, Emily. The family business is in crisis. I'm not part of the family business, remember? You said I should leave the success to my cousins. He didn't respond to that. The emergency meeting happened without me, but I got updates throughout the week from various family members who couldn't believe I wasn't more concerned about Golden Fork's situation. Mom called Wednesday morning. Emily, your father is beside himself. Apparently this Thames River Holdings company owned most of Golden Fork and just decided to sell everything. No warning, no negotiation. They have 60 days to find new funding or close all the restaurants. That sounds complicated, I said. I'm sure Uncle Mike will figure something out. He's very good at business. But where are they going to find $200 million in 60 days? And why would an investor just walk away from a profitable company? I thought about how to answer that. Maybe they had reasons we don't understand. Thursday, Derek called. Emily, I know you're not involved in the restaurant business, but do you know anyone who might be interested in investing in Golden Fork? We're reaching out to everyone we can think of. I don't really move in investment circles, Derek. I'm just a librarian, remember? Right, but maybe through the library system? Maybe some of your patrons are business people. I almost laughed. I'll keep an ear out. Friday afternoon, Uncle Mike himself called. Emily, I'm going to ask you something that might sound crazy. But Thames River Holdings. Those initials are TRH. Your parents' names are Tom and Rebecca. Is there any chance? I mean, this is going to sound insane. But is there any chance you know something about this company? I was quiet for a long moment. Uncle Mike, that does sound insane. Where would I get $200 million to invest in restaurants? I know. It's just that the timing is so strange. The liquidation happened the day after the reunion, right after. He trailed off. Right after what? Right after your father made those comments about your career choices. You think I destroyed the family business because Dad hurt my feelings? No, of course not. I told you it was crazy. I'm just grasping at straws here. 2 weeks later, Golden Fork Enterprises filed for bankruptcy protection. Without Thames River Holdings' continued funding, they couldn't maintain operations across 23 locations. The restaurants began closing one by one, starting with the newest locations that hadn't yet established strong customer bases. The family was devastated. Uncle Mike had to lay off more than 400 employees. Derek, Sarah, and Kevin all lost their management positions. Aunt Rebecca had to liquidate her retirement savings to cover personal expenses. Dad called me 3 times during this period, each conversation more desperate than the last. Emily, I don't understand how this happened. We had such a strong business model. We were profitable. We had expansion plans. Maybe the investor had other priorities, I suggested. But who just walks away from a profitable restaurant chain? It doesn't make business sense. I wouldn't know, Dad. I don't understand business complexity, remember? The final blow came 6 weeks after the reunion. The Chicago Tribune ran an article about Golden Fork's bankruptcy. Local restaurant chain collapses after major investor withdrawal. The article included interviews with several family members who expressed confusion about Thames River Holdings' motivations. Uncle Mike was quoted, "We never understood why they decided to liquidate. The company was profitable and growing. It seemed like a purely arbitrary decision." Derek added, "Thames River Holdings never communicated with us directly. Everything went through lawyers and fund managers. We still don't know who they really were or why they walked away." I read the article during my lunch break at the library, sitting in the staff room with my sandwich and coffee. That evening, Dad called one final time. "Emily, I need to ask you something and I want you to be completely honest with me." "Okay." "At the reunion when I was talking about your career, when I said you'd never amount to anything in business, were you upset about that?" I thought carefully about how to answer. "Dad, you've been saying things like that my entire adult life. If I got upset every time you dismissed my potential, I'd never stop being upset. But this time was different. This time was in front of the whole family. In front of everyone. It was." And the next day our investor pulled out. Coincidences happen. There was a long silence. Emily, Thames River Holdings. TRH, Tom and Rebecca's initials. I noticed that too. Is there something you're not telling me? I looked around my small apartment, at the library books stacked on my coffee table, at the simple furniture I'd bought from IKEA. The apartment that cost me $1,200 a month while I had $47 million sitting in various investment accounts. Dad, you've spent 10 years explaining to everyone that I don't understand business. That I'm not ambitious enough for entrepreneurship. That I should leave success to my cousins. Why would you think I'd be capable of secretly owning a restaurant chain? Because I'm starting to think I might have been wrong about you. This was the first time in my adult life that my father had admitted being wrong about anything related to my capabilities. What makes you think that? Because someone with enough money to destroy a $200 million company overnight would have to be very, very smart. And very, very patient. And very, very strategic. I didn't respond immediately. Emily, are you Thames River Holdings? I set down my coffee and walked to my window, looking out at the Chicago skyline. In the distance, I could see the building that had housed Golden Forks corporate headquarters until they'd lost their lease last week. Dad, if I were Thames River Holdings, that would mean I'd spent 7 years secretly funding the family business while you told everyone I was too stupid to understand entrepreneurship. Yes. That would mean I sat through dozens of family gatherings listening to you mock my career while I was actually the person paying everyone's salaries. Yes. That would mean I have access to the kind of money and financial expertise that you've always said I was too simple to understand. Yes. And that would mean you've been completely wrong about my capabilities for my entire adult life. There was a very long silence. Finally, Dad said, Emily, are you Thames River Holdings? Dad, what do you think? Another silence. Then, I think I owe you the biggest apology of my life. Yes, you do. And I think I've been an idiot. Yes, you have. And I think you just taught me the most expensive lesson I've ever learned. I smiled, looking out at the city lights. Business lessons are always expensive, Dad. The good ones anyway. 3 months later, the family was still recovering from Golden Forks' collapse. Most of my cousins had found new jobs, though none at the management level they'd been accustomed to. Uncle Mike was working as a consultant for other restaurant chains, trying to rebuild his professional reputation. Dad and I started having monthly dinners together, just the two of us. We never talked directly about Thames River Holdings, but the dynamic between us had changed completely. He asked about my work at the library with genuine interest. He asked about my thoughts on business news and financial markets. He treated me like someone whose opinions mattered. During one of these dinners he said, Emily, I've been thinking about what happened with Golden Fork. Oh. About whether the family could have done anything differently. Whether we could have maintained the relationship with our investor. I thought about this. Probably. Investors usually want to feel valued and respected. They want to know that their contributions are appreciated. Instead of taken for granted. Dad nodded slowly. Good investors are hard to find. Smart money doesn't just disappear without reason. Usually not. So if a family had an investor who'd been supporting them for years, they should probably treat that person very well. Probably. Even if that person seemed unassuming on the surface. Especially if that person seemed unassuming on the surface. We ate in comfortable silence for a while. Finally, Dad said, Emily, I don't know if you'll ever tell me the complete truth about what happened with Golden Fork. Maybe someday. But I want you to know that regardless of what the truth is, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of your work at the library. I'm proud of your intelligence. I'm proud of your strategic thinking abilities. I smiled. Thank you, Dad. And if you ever decide to get involved in business ventures in the future, I hope you'll consider letting your old man participate. Maybe as a junior partner. Someone who listens more and talks less. I thought about this offer. About whether our relationship was ready for that level of partnership. I'll keep that in mind, I said. 6 months later, I made my first open investment under my own name. A small independent bookstore in my neighborhood that was struggling with rent increases. Emily Johnson, investor and strategic advisor. The owner, Mrs. Chin, was surprised when I offered to help. Are you sure you understand the retail book business? It's quite complex. I smiled. I'm a quick learner. The bookstore thrived under new management and expanded to include a cafe and event space. Mrs. Chen often told customers that her success was due to finding the right investor at the right time. Someone who understood the business and treated me with respect, she'd say. That's the most important thing in any partnership. And sometimes when Dad visited the bookstore, I'd catch him smiling as he listened to Mrs. Chen explain her business philosophy. He never said anything, but I could tell he was connecting the dots between my approach to investing and whatever lessons he'd learned from the Golden Fork experience. Because the best business lessons are the ones that teach you to recognize talent and wisdom wherever you find it. Even in the people you thought you understood completely.